My boyfriend and his best friend are going on a week-long vacation together, and they excluded me from the trip. My boyfriend, 29, planned a summer vacation to his mom's friend's house in Hawaii with me and his two best friends, a guy, 25, and a girl, also 29. We planned this trip all spring, but at some point the guy friend bailed, leaving just the three of us. For context, my boyfriend and I have been together for 9 months. Discussing moving in together and agreeing our relationship is serious and long-term. In early June, when the guy friend dropped out, the female friend called my boyfriend and said that with only three of us, she felt uncomfortable with me joining since she barely knows me and didn't want to feel like a third wheel. She said if I went, she wouldn't. They didn't tell me, changed the plans, and organized a trip for just the two of them to Costa Rica instead. I was trying to figure out my summer vacation dates and, hearing no updates about the trip, asked my boyfriend which week in August to plan for Hawaii. He told me he'd spoken with his friend, and since she didn't want to go if I was going, they were traveling to Costa Rica together. He suggested we might go to Mexico later. I was upset and tried discussing how I felt. We agreed to take a trip to Copenhagen, a place we both wanted to visit, as a compromise. I also asked to meet his friend to feel better about their trip. On July 4th, we visited her and her boyfriend in another city. While it was nice to meet her, the trip was very cold. She wasn't friendly to me, and my boyfriend noted she was unfriendly to both of us. I'm very outgoing and usually connect easily, but I couldn't break through to her or her boyfriend. They were also distant with each other, arguing a bit about their future and her boyfriend's separate 3-week trip, planned for the same dates as her trip with my boyfriend. I tried befriending her to feel better about their vacation, but after the visit, I told my boyfriend I still felt uncomfortable and insulted by how everything was handled. I attempted to build a connection between us all and asked him to find a way to make me feel better about the trip. When we visited his family, they were shocked by how he'd rearranged the plans and said they'd be furious in my shoes. This led to an argument where I again asked him to find a solution to help me feel secure about him traveling with her without me. He promised he'd never do this again, but it felt unconvincing. He half-heartedly suggested not going, but the tickets and bookings were already paid, and I didn't want to ruin their trip or face resentment from him or his friend. He told me to come up with something to make me feel better and kept delaying until the trip day arrived. He bought me a bag of candy and I drove them to the airport. I feel devalued and crushed. I want to break up but don't want to destroy what's otherwise been a great relationship. Before we move to the update, I suggest pausing the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Personally, I think this is a mess. It's one thing to not take your partner on a trip you didn't plan together, but another to plan it together and then exclude them at the last minute in such a ridiculous way. His friend said she wouldn't go because of his girlfriend, someone she doesn't even know? That's a bizarre excuse. Why not get to know her? They did meet, and she still went with him. Now the update. Update, 9 days later. The day I drove my boyfriend to the airport, I was devastated. He texted me, but I didn't respond. I didn't know what I wanted, but wasn't ready to act in that state. The next day, I reflected and sent him a message saying, I didn't feel safe or loved due to how the trip was handled, and I'd leave his things at his place and give his keys to a neighbor. He called, but I didn't pick up. He texted confused about what was happening. For the rest of the week, he called and messaged, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. By Thursday, he realized I was serious and started asking logistical questions like, which neighbor has my keys? When he returned and saw his things at his place, he panicked, called, and left a long voicemail. I was at work all day and still didn't want to respond afterward. He begged for an explanation, saying he didn't understand. The next day, I sent another message clearly stating we were done. He got angry, sending a flurry of texts about how he didn't understand why I was throwing away what we'd built. In an angry voicemail, he said he didn't get why I was upset and refused to accept the breakup because I hadn't given him a say or explained in person. I didn't plan to respond and tried staying calm, but it got to me. So I wrote him a letter. I tried calling first, but broke down crying and said I'd email it instead. Here's what I wrote. The time apart gave me space to think about what matters to me in a relationship, and I realize we shouldn't be together. I'm sorry for asking you to change things in your life you shouldn't have to change for me or anyone. From the start, this trip was handled disrespectfully. Your friend, who I didn't even know, gave you an ultimatum. Her or me. You chose her. You didn't suggest she meet me, which would have made sense since I'm supposedly your long-term partner. You didn't try to convince her to include someone else or consult me. For most people, that's enough to end things, but I stayed. Your friend has a history with you that's unclear to me. There were rumors you spent a night together while you were with another girlfriend, though supposedly nothing happened. I also learned you were once in love with her, at least theoretically, but then she started dating her current boyfriend, closing that door for you. It took her boyfriend a long time to feel okay with your friendship, and you worked to make him comfortable. Now, this woman I don't know unilaterally excluded me from the trip. You didn't even tell me until I asked about Hawaii. You booked tickets for the two of you while I was hosting dinner with guests, spending over an hour in my room picking flights. I asked you to join us multiple times, but you said just a few more minutes. There was no reason to do that right then. Your friend's in the same time zone, working 9 to 5. She could have handled it. It made my stomach churn all evening. To feel better, I asked to meet her. We arranged a short trip to see her and her boyfriend, and as you agreed, they were inexplicably cold. Our first conversation was about how she messaged her boyfriend while he was in another relationship to get him to date her. You shared her recent talks with you showing instability in her relationship. I told you this worried me, yet I wanted things to work out for you, me, and her. I was serious about you and saw no point in forbidding your trip with your best friend. I wanted it to work, but every detail of this trip fueled my doubts. Your parents and grandparents were stunned when we told them about it, saying it was a risky move given our relationship's fragility after just 9 months. We discussed this at the climbing gym, in the car while booking Copenhagen on Airbnb, and when I said again I felt uncomfortable and hurt. I asked for help, but you told me to figure out what would comfort me, and I couldn't either. The plan for her to come to my place for board games before your trip was canceled. She was supposed to sleep over but not spend time with us. You said you didn't discuss it with her in time, and it wasn't even raised 2 days before the trip. That upset me. You didn't know what to do, and I don't blame you. Things were out of control. I didn't know either. My only solution was to wait out the trip. I told you I had 2 options: endure it or break up. I didn't want to break up, but I had less and less strength to cope. She arrived at my place late and I drove you both to the airport. After everything, I know you saw how miserable I was. You went anyway, and when I didn't reply to your text, you wrote, hoping I was okay, and went to sleep. No calls. The rest of the week was awful. Your response to my message was basically, "I'm sorry you feel that way," saying I was unfair. You never acknowledged that a trip to a honeymoon-perfect place, something we talked about, was a crazy, terrible idea, even with my reluctant okay. People in relationships don't act like this, except maybe your friend. My emotional needs were unmet to a point of no return. We had great moments, but there was unnecessary pain and suffering. I can't accept your relationship with her. I could have made you choose between us, but I don't want that. I want you to keep your best friend, and I want to leave. I loved you, but I won't fight this battle or hear you call me crazy for not seeing your platonic bond. It's like convincing someone to change their favorite food or color. I don't feel good in this relationship and don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't need mutual consent or your permission to end it. He replied with an apologetic letter taking responsibility for nearly everything except admitting his relationship with her could make me uncomfortable or that I couldn't handle their bond. He said the only thing that ruined our relationship was my perspective. I responded that trust needs to be built, and he put too much strain on our relationship too soon, before trust was established. He agreed and apologized. For me, it ended peacefully, but this relationship format doesn't work for me, and his responses didn't change anything. I'm sticking with my decision. Before we move to the next story, I agree with the author, a very rational, healthy perspective. If the relationship doesn't suit you, you leave, especially after only 9 months, no marriage, no kids. Walk away to avoid more issues. Now, the second story. I caught my wife cheating with our friend during a group beach trip, and thanks to our prenuptial agreement, I left her with nothing. I'm 40, my wife is 32. We recently moved to a new area where we didn't know anyone. Luckily, through our kids' friends, we met some great couples to hang out with. One couple, let's call them Larry and Pam, really clicked with us. We shared many interests, and they lived a glamorous, jet-setting lifestyle despite having kids. Before meeting them, my wife and I didn't think that was possible. We quickly became close and started spending a lot of time together, helped by our kids also becoming friends. Everything was going great. Double dates or trips were easy to plan with them, and we could talk about parenting or just chat. After a couple of months, I noticed Larry was getting a bit too comfortable. Once he flirted with my wife, and I jokingly told him to cool it, saying she's taken. Pam shrugged it off, saying he's just a flirt and it's harmless. I was confident in my relationship and didn't mind light flirting, which I always thought was innocent as long as boundaries weren't crossed. But the flirting continued often enough to make me uneasy. My wife is stunning. I'm not saying Pam isn't attractive, but Larry would have to be blind not to notice my wife. I started doubting whether he respected our boundaries. Every summer, Pam and Larry sent their kids to a sleepaway camp and convinced us to send ours to the same one this time. The idea was that while the kids were away for 2 weeks, the adults could take a child-free vacation. It sounded amazing, honestly. My wife and I were excited for the trip, seeing it as a chance for a second honeymoon. In the weeks leading up to it, my wife seemed a bit distant. I chalked it up to her feeling anxious about being away from the kids for 2 weeks, longer than we'd ever been apart. But I noticed she was secretly making calls and texting, hiding her screen. I got curious about what was going on. The trip day arrived, and we joined Pam and Larry at a rented beachfront house we'd all chipped in for. The place was luxurious, right on the beach, with a hot tub, a big grill, and premium vibes. A paradise. The first night, we bought beer and wine. I grilled meat, got a bit tipsy, and we all hung out on the porch. I noticed my wife and Larry flirting again. I was in a great mood, so I laughed it off once more. I went to bed, but the next morning I woke up to find my wife wasn't beside me. When I walked around the house, I saw her on the beach in a swimsuit, swimming. No big deal. Except Larry was there, shirtless in swim trunks, standing close, clearly checking her out. She wasn't deflecting his gaze. I went out to them and they greeted me casually like nothing was wrong, which calmed me slightly. But I didn't like Larry ogling my wife, so I practically dragged him back to the house. Later that night, we all went dancing. More drinks, more fun on the dance floor, and we were a bit drunk. I noticed Larry constantly gravitating toward my wife. By now, I wasn't laughing. He was always near her, and it was really annoying. What pissed me off more was that she let him. He'd put his hands on her waist and she'd lean into him. Was she mistaking him for me, or was she that drunk? I waited until morning to talk to her. She brushed it off, saying I had nothing to worry about and seemed not to even remember dancing with Larry. On the third and final day of our trip, everything fell apart. We'd planned to stay 6 days, but I had to leave early because I caught Larry with my wife. The day before had been mostly fine, except I caught Larry staring at my wife in her bikini a couple of times. I believed her dismissal and tried not to stress. But as often happens, the moment you relax, you realize you were right all along. We were preparing to grill. I was in the backyard cooking, and Pam was with me, skewering chicken and vegetables. I didn't notice my wife and Larry had disappeared. I ran into the house to grab more meat from the fridge and heard noises from the laundry room. I stopped and listened. It was clearly two people trying to hook up as quietly as possible. I flung open the door and saw my wife and Larry in the act. They were so caught up they barely noticed me enter. Seconds later, Pam walked in, looking for vegetables, and saw it too. She screamed at Larry, who stumbled back, knocking my wife to the floor. Both were shocked, not expecting to get caught. I turned and started packing my things. My wife ran after me, begging me to stay, to forgive her, saying Larry meant nothing, that he was just there at the right moment. The laundry room was the right moment? It made no sense. I told her to back off and she did, on the nightstand. I scrolled through her text to see how long this had been going on. It had been weeks. She and Larry had been messaging about how excited they were for the beach trip. Larry said he couldn't wait to see her in a swimsuit. At first she called it inappropriate, but he persisted, and eventually she admitted she liked him too and wanted some excitement in her life. They'd hooked up once before the trip. At our house, in the kitchen, I found Pam and told her everything I'd seen on my wife's phone. She was as hurt as I was. We left the beach together and drove home, talking the whole way about how angry we were and how we wanted to ruin their lives. When I got married, my mom insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I wasn't filthy rich, but I'd inherited money before meeting my wife and had saved a decent amount. I had a good job, stable salary, and great benefits, enough for my wife not to work. Our prenup clearly stated that in a divorce, she'd get a portion of my assets, unless the divorce was due to her infidelity or breach of marital vows. Since she cheated, I could walk away without losing a dime. It was the best way I could hit her where it hurt. She didn't come home until the next day, and I wondered if she'd used it as a chance to spend more time with Larry. I told her we were divorcing and that I wanted her out of the house. She said I couldn't do that, claiming she had rights and was entitled to half of everything. It felt like she'd planned this all along. I started questioning if she ever loved me. I reminded her of the prenup. I saw her indignation turn to panic as she realized she was screwed. Pam and I both filed for divorce. I didn't have to pay my wife a cent and I sold the house. Now I'm just trying to piece my life back together. I know good people are out there. I just need to find them. That's it. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous videos linked here, and good luck.